Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm very honored to be here today. I'm honored on behalf of myself and for Taylor Guitars. We love the opportunity to come out and get to know people in our community better. And we consider our community to be the world, as you can tell, as an international company. Particularly, I'd like to thank Erin Calloway for inviting me. There she is. I saw 2 pink shirts in the back there. Over here, Erin. Thank you for inviting me to speak today. I appreciate it. And I also would like to mention that we have 2 other people from Taylor Guitars here today. Brian Baer, our Director of Finance, is here, and Ramsey Helson, my Executive Assistant. And I wouldn't be here if it weren't for her, because I don't think about where I need to be ever. She just makes sure I'm there, which is really great. And it's Ramsey's thoughts about presenting to you our quarterly magazine and the coasters there. Many of you know these coasters are actually the sound holes from the guitars. I have met some of you prior to the presentation today when we were starting lunch. Those that I didn't get to come around and meet in person, just welcome, and maybe afterwards I'll get the chance to get to know you a little bit better in person as well. During my conversation today, feel free to ask questions as we're going along rather than waiting until the end. I think it's better when something's on somebody's mind. This presentation is for you, so anything you'd like to talk about, although I have a PowerPoint presentation here, that's really not what's important. What's important is just connecting and answering any questions that you might have about the company. All right? Or anything. Oh, wow. Okay, so this is the 4 locations that we have for Taylor Guitars. We are in El Cajon at 1980 Gillespie Way. That is not our original location. As we go through the history, you'll see that the company originally started in Lemon Grove, but we've been in El Cajon for probably about 20 years now. And we have every day we have a tour at 1 o'clock that's open to the public and free every day that we're open. So check our website. If you haven't come out and seen how a guitar is made, I would encourage you to come out to that tour. You don't have to sign up in advance, just show up. And it's about 90 minutes, and you'll see everything about how a guitar is made. I think that's kind of interesting for a manufacturer. A lot of manufacturers have a lot of trade secrets and intellectual property that they're protecting, and they're not open to the public. It's not often that the public can just go in and see every single thing there is to see about a manufacturer every single day. And we have that philosophy because our belief is that the most important thing is that every person that wants to try to play a guitar has a good quality guitar to play it. So we don't have any secrets about the way we build our quality guitars. In fact, we invite our competitors to come to our factory, and they frequently do. And our employees have helped teach our competitors how to keep finish and make it stick right and work right, how to do bracing patterns, different aspects of guitar manufacturing, so that with the end goal in mind that there will never be a bad guitar in the world, because that's really what our vision is that every person that picks up a guitar, whether it's Taylor or anybody else's, gets a really good quality playing experience. The second location up here is T-Systems Europe, Maroa-straat in Amsterdam, the Netherlands. We established that location in 2011. When we get to that part of the history, I'll go through a little bit of details about how we took back our own distribution there and did some vertical integration forward with that, and what a difference it's made to our company for doing that. I did get the opportunity to go live in Amsterdam for about 5 months during that process, and I will say it's a great place to live. If you ever have the opportunity to move to Amsterdam, think seriously about doing it. It's a great place to be. Brian Baer travels there quite regularly as well, as he's responsible for all the finance around the world, and we alternate visiting there on a regular basis. We have Taylor Guitars Tecate, which was started about 15 years ago. We're in the process of expanding that facility now. We actually have 4 buildings there, which we're going to combine into one larger building down in El Bajío, sitting between Tecate and Tijuana. We're in the negotiations on that right now. That maquiladora was started because we have a saying at Taylor Guitars that says, in 10 years, we'll be glad we did this. So we do a lot of things that we're really struggling with at the moment and are very hard to do, but we're doing them because we believe that in 10 years we'll be very glad we did it. And that's the same with our maquiladora in Tecate. We don't have public tours on a regular basis, but we're happy to organize tours for universities, schools, any organization to come down and take a tour of the Tecate facility. And you would see that what you're seeing built in Tecate is what you're seeing built in El Cajon. The only difference is Tecati's building the guitars that are made with our laminates and veneers, and El Cajon's building our solid wood guitars. It's the exact same process, the same pattern, bracing patterns, the exact, you wouldn't know that you're in a maquiladora and Tecati versus El Cajon, other than looking at the type of wood that's involved in the construction. Then we have Camp. We also have one that we didn't show a picture of here. We have a joint venture in Madrid called TLM, Taylor Listag Medinter. We partnered with one of our wood suppliers to acquire an ebony mill in Cameroon. And we have one employee there. And then in Cameroon, Quartier Otsa in Yaoundé, we have 70 employees, which is on top of the 700 that we have in Tecati and El Cajon. So we have total around the world just over 770 employees. I actually will be visiting Cameroon again next week. I've spent a lot of time there. We opened that factory, we purchased and acquired that ebony mill at the same time that we were opening the European distribution. So part of my living in Amsterdam was that I could commute between Cameroon and San Diego. It's a great, I think I had one of the longest commutes in the world during those 5 months. But that worked out very conveniently because you can't get to Cameroon without going through Europe anyways. So it worked out well for us. All right. So for the company history, Bob Taylor and Kurt Listag were 19 and 21 years old, respectively, and they went to work for American Dream Guitars out in Lemon Grove, which basically was a Quonset hut with a couple of wooden benches as guitar benches. And they just started there building guitars. This is Kurt on the right, Bob on the left.
And when was this?
This was in 1972, 73, thereabouts. It's 1973, there we go. In 1974, Sam Radding, who was the owner of the American Dream, came to Kurt and Bob and said, I'm selling my company, and those of you that work here need to figure out how to buy it. And they were 19 and 21 years of age, and they knew they liked building guitars, and they thought, what a great opportunity, we're gonna buy this guitar company. Not knowing what that meant, not knowing anything about it. Unlike you, they weren't college students who had a concept of international business or just general business at all. But they borrowed money from their parents and bought the American Dream. Here, it says in the formal history that they renamed it Westland Music Company because it sounded big and important. The behind-the-scenes story of that is that the day after they purchased the American Dream, Sam Radding came to them and explained that part of what they purchased was not the brand name. He had maintained the brand name as part of the agreement himself. So they had to quickly come up with a name for the company, and they called it Westland Music Company, thinking that sounded big and important. Later, at some stage, they switched it to Taylor Guitars. They had to choose between Taylor Guitars and Listag Guitars, they figured, and Taylor just seemed like a better fit, and Bob Taylor's really the guitar builder, and Kurt Listag's really the business person. One interesting fact is that they own this company 50-50 and have owned it 50-50 from day one. So like a lot of you might have heard that there can't be a long-term 50-50. Somebody has to have control. There needs to be 51% for those decisions that have to get made. And I kind of thought that before I came to work at Taylor Guitars, and I have seen that for 40 years they have maintained a 50-50 ownership. And anytime that they work through issues about strategic decisions or anything, they do that behind closed doors, and what the employees see is a consolidated front when they walk out of that door, and they've maintained that for 40 years. So we say it's a lot like a marriage. It's not a marriage, but it's kind of like a marriage in that they've had to make it work, and they've found a way to make it work. So I guess the message would be don't shy away from 50-50 if you've got two people that are really committed to making it work and looking at it from a long-term perspective. All right. When they first started, they had 5 employees, and they were making 493 guitars a year. This year, we're on track to make 135,000 guitars. So you can see the difference. We make more than, 600 to 650 a day, depending on the day. At that time, they made 500 guitars in 1 year. What they basically did is Bob would build a guitar, Kurt would put it in the back of his old Volvo wagon and drive around and sell it for cash. This is true. And then he would take that cash and bring it back and buy enough material to build 2 guitars. And Bob would build 2 guitars while Kurt was on the phone figuring out where he was going to sell 2 guitars. And he would go out with his Volvo wagon, sell 2 guitars, bring back the material, and Bob would try to build 3 guitars out of that. And that's really the story of how it goes. Actually, Bob tells a story in a book he wrote a couple years ago, and we'll be raffling off that book at the end of this. So one of you will get to read that story in person, and please share it with others. In 1999, there was a pretty big revolutionary breakthrough, the NT neck, which changed the way guitars are built. Guitars had been built the same way for about 150 years prior to the NT neck. The NT neck is a bolt-on neck instead of a dove and mortise and tenon joint. And it means that the truss rod and the neck angle can be easily adjusted. So you can adjust the playability of the neck. If you get any buzzing on your strings, it used to be a huge task if your neck got bent or warped at all to get it adjusted. And with other competitors' guitars, even though they're great guitars, it is still a huge task to have to remove a neck and adjust the guitar. But with the Taylor neck, it actually is an easy process. And this is something that we have patented. In 2003, by then we were up to 372 employees and making 56,000 guitars a day. And we unveiled the new expression system acoustic pickup, which was the first time in the history of guitars that an acoustic guitar could be amplified and still sound like an acoustic guitar without losing any of the depth of the tone of the acoustic guitar. And we developed that in-house. I'm not going to go through all of these, but I will jump forward to 2010 when we released the GS Mini. Some of us were talking about the GS Mini earlier, and Crystal actually owns one. It's a 3/4 size travel guitar. I own one as well. It's the guitar that I was taking around France for 3 weeks. And I played guitar when I was a teenager, and I'm learning again now after the age of 53. And my fingers aren't as adept at it as they were when I was younger. So even though my brain knows where the fingers are supposed to go, getting them to go there is kind of a challenge. And are there any other guitar players in the room besides Crystal? Okay. So for those of you that are guitar players, this might be very simple, but if you think about it, if you started when you were maybe a little older than you are now, having to do bar chords and B chords. So I started calling the F chord and the B chord the F and B because I couldn't do it. However, after 4 months of practice, I had a big breakthrough on the trip, as Aaron said, and I now can play the F and B chords, so I'm pretty excited about that. And I actually had a bar chord sound like a bar chord. So I think if you can get it once, you can get it again, right? So that was pretty exciting. But the GS Mini is what we all travel with, and Bob Taylor designed that guitar as a 3/4 size travel guitar when he was going on a USO tour to Iraq with Zach Brown. And he wanted to create a guitar that he could give to the GIs, and he took a number of them over there with him on the tour and gave them to GIs there and said, play them in this horrible environment, with the thought that if this guitar is able to stand up to this horrible environment over here of real dryness and the sand and on the move all the time and not being treated super gently, riding around in the back of a tank or whatever, it's probably going to be a pretty solid guitar that somebody could take to the beach. Right, so that was the concept, and it's a very affordably priced guitar, and the idea is that it's basically people's travel guitars, and it's one of the best-selling guitars in the world today, and it was released over just a couple years ago. We're, in fact, gearing up some more tooling now to increase the number of the GS Minis that we can make a day because it's had such a great response. And typically, a lot of people will buy this as their second or third or fourth guitar. Sometimes it's their only guitar, it just depends, but it's been a great success for us. And I think it's a testament in branding to the fact that, when you have an entrepreneur who is very passionate about what they're building and designing, and they think about what their needs are, a lot of times those needs transfer to a lot of people that are out there as well. And we've seen that with the GS Mini. 2011, we opened the offices in a warehouse in Amsterdam and directly started distributing our guitars there. That was the same year that Bob wrote the book and the same year that we bought the ebony mill in Cameroon. It was a really busy year. Our distribution originally in Europe had been through a series of country distributors, which I'm sure you're aware that's a very typical progression for international business. You go and you find a country distributor, and what you're looking for is somebody who's going to manage the credit, do some brand development, do some market development for you, and they have an import license and can bring your product in. I mean, those are kind of the main things you're looking for a distributor to do. And those are things that leverage your capabilities as a small company to be able to go to more countries, basically. So we had multiple distributors across Europe. We essentially gave all of them notice and terminated our distributor agreements and moved our entire European distributorship to Fender. And there was a lot of good reasons for that. Fender had a good established market in Europe. They knew all the stores, the customers. They actually increased our sales. When we were at the individual distributors, we were at about $2 million a year sales in Europe. Under Fender, we went to about $4 million a year in sales, in revenue. So that was in US dollars. So that was a good move for us. But we started spending a lot of time over there, and what we realized is that Fender has 26 different brands. There's, of course, the Fender brand, but there's the Ovation brand, there's Gretsch, there's just a number of different brands under Fender, and we were brand number 27. And as Taylor Guitars in the United States, we're brand number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. We are it. We're just Taylor Guitars. That's what we do. So we realized when we were working with Fender that they're a great company, but we're a very jealous brand. We didn't want 26 brands coming before us. So we decided that it was time to part ways with Fender, gave appropriate notice on our contract, still great friends with Fender, and took our own distribution direct by opening a location in Amsterdam. We ship the guitars from El Cajon and Tecate to Amsterdam, and then we have our own sales force there in 8 or 9 countries. We sell in 5 or 6 currencies. We translate everything to multiple languages. We have a group of customer service and repair folks at the plant in Amsterdam. And it was a huge task to put together, but our sales are on track in Amsterdam, service through Amsterdam to the EU, 2 years later to be about 15 million US. Yes, Denise.
So do you feel that it was a transition just to start with a distributor and then move it yourself?
Yeah.
Or not really a mistake, but it was the way that you could segue
Yes.
into the market?
I think it was a way we could segue into the market. I don't think it was a mistake at all. I think that when you're trying to establish a global presence, you have to really pick and choose where you can spend your bandwidth and your resources. And so we have distributors to this day in Japan, Australia, Brazil, Philippines, Taiwan, Thailand, India. We have about 20, Korea, probably about 20 international distributors. So we have a mixed model today where we have distributors still in some countries and we have our own distribution direct in the US and in Europe. And I think, go ahead.
Could you comment for a moment on your product mix in those different markets? Because here, you guys are known as, if not among the top 2 elite luthiers here in the country. So
Right.
with this new technology, are you marketing a much narrower mix of product in Europe, or are you really taking it all over there?
We really took it all over there. And that's a question whether that's the right answer or not. We're still exploring that. We actually sell our full product line, which is about 300 standard products plus custom guitars and BTOs everywhere we sell in the world.
What percentage of your SKUs account for what? Do you have an 80-20 rule?
We do have an 80-20 rule, yeah. We're probably like 83-17 or something like that, but it's basically 80-20.
And yet you're offering the full line.
And yet we're offering the full
And
line,
so
right.
Are you marketing your brand as such to reflect the American brand, or are you finding yourself distributing in a newer, more broader context, and so you're going for a newer, more broader brand there?
We're going for a newer, more broader brand there, and the first year or so we were really focusing to separate ourselves from Fender. We are not Fender, we are Taylor, even though it was your Fender rep that was coming and calling on you before. It's interesting, we have a lot of internal discussions about the long tail concept because we're definitely a long tail company. You know, we've got, while we are an 80-20, that 20 is, there's a lot of people that play Taylor guitars because they can get one of that 20% of that range. And They may also own some of our 80%, but they like the fact that they can get the 20%. And our largest single acoustic competitor in the world is Martin Guitars. I know you know your guitar industry. And they're a great brand, and they have a very broad range as well and offer the same range all around the world. It's a huge challenge for supply chain management and for forecasting, which there's no such thing as forecasting. Anytime anybody tells you there's forecasting, there's no forecasting. There's, put your finger up in the air like the Boy Scout and hope that you got it right, and then have a backup plan for when you've stocked the wrong thing.
Quick follow-up. Can you comment for a moment on the impact of the Chinese and Korean players that are duplicating the same kind of quality at marginal prices? And what does that do to your brand here, and what does that do for your brand growth abroad?
So the interesting thing there is I can't really speak to the quality of the electric guitars that are coming out of China and Korea and Japan. In terms of the, Japan I'll set aside separately, China in specific. For the acoustic guitars, we're not seeing them as the same quality. We do have, we've been seeing a lot more counterfeiting in the past 2 years than we had before, which we aggressively fight. A little story about that. Part of how we fight the counterfeiting is we work with other manufacturers, because typically if a guitar manufacturer is knocking off guitars in China, they're knocking off everybody's guitars and they're just slapping a different label on them as they come out the door, right? So we work with the other manufacturers, and we have found a really aggressive law firm. Actually, our lawyer was at Baker McKenzie, and now he's moved over to Shepherd Mullen. But it's, you kind of have to be a little bit creative about how you fight Chinese competition. The counterfeits in particular I'm speaking about, not legitimate competition, but actual intellectual property theft in China, because it's very hard to get a real indictment that's going to stick or make any difference, even going together where you're leveraging the fees. We were successful in getting one factory shut down by the same players a couple different times. And the way we did that was an investigation that discovered that the owner of that factory had not completed their mandatory military service. And so we were able to get him for that, not for the counterfeiting. But it got the factory shut down, which was our objective. So you have to kind of think a little bit outside of the box when you're working. Yeah. Go ahead.
How did you go about doing that?
We actually hired a firm, a private investigation firm in China, who uncovered that information. So, and for us, we feel perfectly viable about doing that. I mean, this guy's knocking off our intellectual property. We'll take every legal recourse that we can, and that's a legal recourse. So, all right.
Thank you.
Sure. I'd ask questions as we're going along. That's much better. So at the same time, we mentioned that we purchased an ebony mill in Cameroon. Those of you familiar with the guitar industry may, or even if you're not, you may have heard about Gibson guitars and their challenges with the law over the past few years. So there's a great BBC documentary that describes exactly what happened with Gibson guitars. Bottom line, one day Gibson is at work working, and then all of a sudden the SWAT team comes in and shuts the company down and basically confiscates a whole bunch of black ebony. Those of you that don't know guitars, black ebony is used for the fretboard or the fingerboard and for the bridge, and it's a really important tone wood for the guitar industry, the violin industry, the whole stringed instrument. Ebony only grows in a narrow equator, in a narrow band around the equator. And that's also an area where there's a lot of protected forests. Ebony is an unusual tree because there are no ebony plantations, and the way ebony grows naturally in the forest is there'll be a tree here, there'll be a tree 1.5 kilometers over there, there'll be a tree 1.5 kilometers over there. So unlike a lot of woods, which can be plantation grown or which tend to grow in stands where the seeds drop near each other, ebony actually grows very far away from each other. However, it is the preferred wood for all stringed instruments, for the fingerboards and for the bridges. So there's a great BBC documentary. If you Google silver flying lemurs plus Gibson guitars, you'll find the BBC documentary that I definitely recommend watching, because it's a classic example of how sort of chaos theory can apply to business. So, silver flying lemurs plus Gibson guitars. So basically, there was an environmentalist gentleman that had been working in the UNESCO World Heritage Site in Madagascar for his whole adult life to protect the habitat of these gorgeous silver flying lemurs. And he never comes out of the jungle. He just works in the jungle, documenting their life and everything. But he started seeing that there was these lemurs live in the ebony trees, basically. And he started seeing that the ebony tree forests were being cut down where they're not allowed to in Madagascar in this protected UNESCO World Heritage Site. So he went out of the jungle to the local town, went to the internet cafe, and looked up to find an environmental organization that could help him figure out who was destroying the habitat of the lemurs, and found an organization that came out and did kind of an undercover story on it, put together a package. They discovered that it was Gibson guitars. It was a Chinese cutter who was then selling them to Gibson guitars. And this organization took and built this entire dossier and dropped it on the Department of Justice's desk one morning with no notice. So, you can imagine, wouldn't you love just being that a particular attorney general who came to the office that day, and here's one of the most beloved, iconic companies in the United States, a guitar manufacturer. Who hates guitar manufacturers, really? And then here's this completed dossier that they couldn't deny that said that this wood was being taken illegally. So prior to that, we had been working as Taylor Guitars on the passing of the extension of the Lacey Act. So the Lacey Act is an environmental law that has never been applied to wood in the past. It came about in like 1915 or so. It's been applied to animals and primarily to animals. And it says that if you do something related to an endangered animal that is illegal in its home country, it's illegal in America. That's the essence of the Lacey Act. So we worked with a group of environmental organizations prior to all this happening to have the Lacey Act extended to wood, because we have a strong feeling that we should be abiding by the laws of the countries that we work in, and we work in a number of countries to get our wood. Honduras, Belize, all over Africa, all over South America, that whole band around the equator, Eastern Europe, all the northern latitudes for the maples and the spruces. So we very much want to be in compliance, and we actually didn't expect any pushback from anybody in the industry. We thought this was just, the good guitar guys thing that we would all want to do. Not everybody felt the way we felt about it. That was the first surprise, but the law was passed, and it was that law that Gibson was determined to be in violation of. So when that happened, around that same time, we got notification that a Cameroon ebony mill was up for sale. And we had been using Cameroon ebony for about 37 years in our guitars. And we had a team of people that we send out to see if our wood is legal, and to really kind of go right to the stump and trace it out and see how are the villagers treated, how is the wood bought and paid for, even though we're paying somebody, are they getting the money all the way through where it should be? And that type of thing. And the truth came out that in Cameroon, the wood we were using, the ebony from Cameroon, was not legal. So we kind of had a couple of choices, and this is where the value system of a company comes in. You write those values on the wall and you carry them around in your pocket, and what do they really mean? Well, it's times like this that you find out what they really mean. Because we had a choice of continuing to use wood that we now knew was illegal, or we had a choice of figuring out how to get legal wood, or discontinuing the use of ebony on our guitars. Those were our three choices as we saw it at the strategic level. The third one was not an option. Bob Taylor's not going to put his name on any guitar that does not have an ebony fingerboard and bridge. End of conversation. He will shut the company before he does that, period. In his belief, ebony is very critical to the tone of a guitar, to the long-term playability, to the sound, to the keeping it in tune, and everything. It's not an option. We're the only guitar manufacturer that every one of our guitars from the lowest end up has ebony for the fretboard and for the bridge. So we set that one aside, not okay. Other guitar manufacturers it's okay for, it's not okay for us. That's all good. So now we have to then go to the first one. It's not okay for us to be using illegal wood, period. End of conversation. Okay, even if nobody else knows it, but if we know it, it's not okay. So now we have to find a way to make ebony legal. that was what I was tasked with, among a few others in the company. So the option came up to purchase this ebony mill there, and we said, great, this is how we're going to make it legal. How else do you do it? You buy it, and you make it legal, right? You just go do it. So we sat down with the person we were buying the company from, and I said, I'm here to do due diligence, which was a joke, because there's really no records. There's no books, there's no due diligence. And he said, really, there's only one important thing you need to know, and I've written it all down for you. And he's this salty old guy that's been working in Africa for a couple dozen years, and a Spaniard there, and very Africanized. If you could, there's a group of Europeans and Americans who have worked in Africa for a couple decades that have a certain way of doing business. And the feeling is that you just have to go with the flow, with the culture. Yes, you do corruption. Yes, you do bribing, whatever. There's no other way to do business in Africa. That's the belief of this person that we bought the company from. So he handed me a list of the companies, of the names of all of the government employees from the bush through to the top of the country that he bribes. And proceeded to tell me the negotiations for every single bribe. That this guy's going to want this. No, you don't need to do that. You only need to do this. This one you have to catch on the 3rd day of the month because he has some other obligation on the 5th day of the month. Whatever you do, make sure you're here on the 3rd week of the month with this person, blah, blah, blah. It was a long, long list. And it went from local officials in the jungle all the way up to the very highest levels of the Cameroon government. And very specific. And he said, if you do this, your company will run really, really well. And I'm there to conduct a normal due diligence. I'm an American CFO. What do I know about this? So I said, oh, well, that's great, but that's not how we're going to do business. So let's talk about the legal side of your business. Show me your tax returns. Oh, I don't pay taxes. I bribe the Ministry of Finance and the 3 people at the finance office. So you have no tax returns. Well, yeah, but they've already signed them all off, and I have this special under-the-table letter that we're never going to get an audit and everything. And about this time, I was wishing I'd brought a little more Advil on the trip with me. And we said, okay, so Bob and Vidal, who's our business partner, and I sat down and had a very serious conversation again with Kurt Listug, the 4 of us, about the company's value system and why we're doing this. And I did the usual, MBA thing. Are you kidding me? There's no financial profit for this. We are going to be lucky if we can get this company profitable. We're going to be lucky if we don't get run out of Cameroon without somebody being killed when we stop all these bribes. I mean, from an HR person, just name it. And Bob's like, let's go back to why we're doing this. I'm not going to put my name on a guitar that doesn't have ebony. We're not going to sell ebony that we know is illegal. There is no legal ebony in the world. You kind of come to that Star Trek moment where you're Captain Kirk, and it's like, okay, boss, we're going to go make this ebony legal. So that's been the last 2 years. I traveled there a lot, thanks to Brian being able to cover really everything else in the finance department for Taylor Guitars around the world, because I spend a lot of my time in Cameroon. And, we have an anti-bribery program. We actually have everybody sign saying that we're an American company and that we come under these anti-bribery acts. I'm on our 4th lawyer. Each one has been fired for bribing. Even though the lawyers signed the anti-bribery thing, we caught them bribing. It's been a real challenge to learn to do business and to manage 76 employees in a country like that is set up for absolute corruption. But I am happy to say that everything we've been doing works. The saying in Africa is that white man has the time, but white man has the watch, but black man has the time. And I learned this when I did business in Argentina before and in Morocco, which are also countries that at that time had pretty significant corruption challenges, is you just have to be willing to wait it out. You just have to wait it out. You just have to wait longer than they wait, because they're counting on you being under so much pressure that you can't wait. And that's when everybody succumbs to it. So, we get pulled over onto the side of the road they take our passports, and they say, and I'll let you go. And it's like, got a good book with me. You're content under the tree, I'm content under the tree, I'm going to just sit here and read my book. And you know what? The end of the day comes, and the next time you see my license plate go by, you know that I'm not going to give you any money. So you're going to let me go, because I'm going to sit and read my book until you give me back my passport so I can travel on. And pretty much we trained all of our employees that this is their response for everything. That we also publish, from a marketing perspective, an annual book about our business in Cameroon, and we highlight a lot of the people that have been helpful to us, government officials, employees, just people we've met, tribal chiefs, and they see their pictures in the book, and we tell them that this book goes all over the world. And in this book, we put a call to action for the Cameroon government to stop the specific practices that encourage corruption, and we hand them a book instead of a bribe. And, you know, it's a book that's, you know, it's like this. It's well under any sort of dollar value and everything. And we just say, this is who we are. This is what we're doing. We're here to help Cameroon. And bribing you will not help Cameroon. So we'll just wait. Go ahead.
How far out do you have to go in lead time then to prepare for these kinds of?
We carry about a year's worth of ebony in stock.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Because you
Yeah.
get stuck in port a lot.
Yeah, it takes 3 months to get it through the port from the time it leaves our, we have 12 check stations from the time it leaves our factory till the time it gets to the port. And it typically will sit in the port for 3 months before it goes.
And on our end, do you do most of your business in Port of San Diego or Long Beach?
Long Beach, we bring it into Long Beach. Go ahead.
Yeah, so then your taxes there must be outrageous. Are they?
We're still sorting through what, yes, we have an audit. In fact, part of why I'm going down next week is because we just got another audit for 165,000 euro, which doesn't have any substantiation in terms of the government saying it's this code and it's you were missing these receipts or anything like that. It just, you owe us 165,000 euro in the next 4 days. So we go back and go, I can't even be there in 4 days. Takes me 3 to get there if I left today. So, you know, we write a nice flowery letter in French saying, please, you know, we'd like this postponed till I can be there to meet with you in person and discuss this and have a better understanding and show you our records and show you our books, which is what I'm going down to do next time. And it's our tax bill, surprisingly, once we get down to what is the true legal taxes, what we have to do is we have to typically educate the government officials about what the law is. And the law is not published. The law is stacked in the ministry's offices in these old stacks of manila folders. So we have people go through these stacks and find decrees, because there isn't anything published like on an internet or even a law library. Like even before internet days in the United States, you could go to a law library and look up, you know, the CCH guides and everything else. That doesn't exist there. So they go through and they find these decrees, and then we laminate that decree, make a copy of it, laminate it, show it to the government official, and explain how it is we're in compliance with that particular decree. And then usually they back off when we do that. But that's a resource and a bandwidth commitment on our part that we have to train the employees to know how to do that and to stand. You know, the employees there are not used to standing up to the government. There's some fear with it. And so we've had to really help ameliorate that. We've gotten the U.S. Embassy involved. They have been a great partner for us. The Department of Commerce and the U.S. Embassy is a great international partner anywhere you go.
Do you guys sell your ebony to any other guitar manufacturers?
We do. We sell to Gibson. I'm happy to report that Gibson has legal ebony these days.
Two different quality grades of ebony?
No.
No? Okay.
No, we don't actually. And that was a lot of fear in the industry, as you can imagine, when we bought this. We actually offered the other industry members if they'd like to go in with us to be partners with us on this, and we didn't get any takers. But, and we sell to Martin. Fender doesn't use ebony other than on their highest quality custom shop. They use Indian rosewood, so we don't sell to Fender. We sell to all the top violin makers in the world. And what we learned is that when you look at stringed instruments, you see solid black ebony, always. But what we learned when we were actually in the jungle watching as the trees were felled, only 10% of the ebony trees are naturally solid black. 90% of them have some brown striation in it. The brown striation in Western Africa is referred to as royal ebony. But for the the Western civilization, it's not been sold outside of Africa because we all asked for the black ebony. So For every 10 trees that were felled, 9 of them were left on the forest floor to rot because nobody would pay for brown ebony. But we didn't know because we'd never been asked, would you pay for brown ebony, right? So one of the first things we did is we made a decree, because Cameroon has decrees, we can have decrees, right? So we made a decree that said, anybody that buys the ebony is taking the quality that comes off the line at that moment, the mixture of quality, the mixture of brown-black, the mixture of black, the mixture of black-white. However the tree is, we're all taking that at that time. We all get A, B, C grade. We all get black, black and brown, black and white. Everybody, if you're going to buy ebony from us, you're getting exactly what the forest is giving to us. And we're taking exactly what the forest is giving to us. And then we set out to do a large marketing campaign to the world about how brown and black ebony and black and white ebony doesn't have any different tonal properties. It doesn't have any different density properties. I mean, we did all the lab testing and confirmed that there's no different properties between, it's just a color issue. And really what's been amazing is our artists, later in the presentation I'll show you some of our tailor artists, have really stepped up to the plate, and they are profiling guitars with the striped ebony, and now people want the striped ebony. People are saying, I want some of that striped ebony, and that's what we wanted. So in 2 short years, we've pretty much changed the guitar industry consumer to wanting striped ebony from wanting black ebony. We're working on it with violins and the big alto basses. It's a little more challenging, but.
Who are your top competitors in terms of ebony? It sounds like you guys do a lot, but I mean.
We do. We have a permit. The country of Cameroon allows 2,000 metric tons a year to be cut, and we have 1,000 metric tons in our permit. Our next closest competitor has 400 metric tons. It's a U.S. It was just last year bought by a U.S.-based company called Josie. We've talked with them a lot. We actually share ways of working and kind of, industry association there. The next one down below that is a company called Medeiros Barber. They have 250 metric tons, and they're who we used to purchase our ebony from before we acquired our mill. And then below that, there's a number of small sort of artisan permits at about 25 metric tons apiece, for the country. And that limitation of 2,000 metric tons is set by the Cameroon government, although they can't explain why, because there isn't an inventory of the forest. So, forestry law is another whole thing I won't go into, but it's very fascinating how each country is different. But there's overarching International Monetary Fund permits that were established in 1994, and in many of the equatorial band countries, you need to have one of these overarching IMF permits, and after 1994, they stopped issuing them. So you have to buy a company that already has one of these permits if you want to do forestry in one of those countries. So it makes it a little bit of an interesting twist. So that was 2011. That was keeping us kind of busy. 2012, record-breaking sales year. We had 750 employees and 133,000 guitars made. Quote from Bob Taylor, innovation and efficiency are the hallmarks of a well-functioning factory. Bob is still there every day when he's not touring somewhere around the world in his Land Cruiser with his GS Mini, and very involved still in the innovation of the company. That's in Cameroon, that picture up there. These are some of our brick and mortar retailers on the top here in the US, and then we also have internet retailers, both US and internationally. And those of you that play recognize some of those names up there. A lot of what we do in our marketing is to pull the customer into the dealer, and that's what we're doing in Europe as well. So we do more of that. We do a lot of more marketing to the end user than we do to the dealer. We stage a number of events around the world. They're listed on our website, one of which is called Find Your Fit, which is basically we send a guitar concierge into a dealer, and you come in and that guitar concierge speaks with you and explains, wants to understand your playing style, tries different guitars with you, talks to you about what you like, what you don't like, makes suggestions for you. Roadshow, a similar thing. There's a demonstration of a number of great guitars, and then there's a petting zoo afterwards where they've brought a number of wonderful guitars in, and everybody gets to play with the guitars and check them out. One of the things that's kind of fun is on all of our advertising or all of our marketing promotion, 95% of the people you see are our own employees. So that's Aaron Dablow. He's the head of our independent sales group here in the United States. By that I mean the independent retailers. But it'll either be a local artist that plays with us, or it'll be one of our employees when you see any of our ads. Brian's been in an ad. We also host a Taylor Guitars University. 10 times a year, we bring our dealers into our local office, either here or in Amsterdam, and we host them for 3 days. And we go in depth with them about how they can better sell the guitar. We answer their questions. We teach them about our latest guitars. We pay for all of the travel expenses. We put them up down in Old Town. We take a bus to run them back and forth to and from the factory. Tour the factory with Bob Taylor, questions with Bob Taylor and Andy Powers, our guitar designer. And it's just a great fun event. And then many of the office staff and the production staff come and have lunch with them or have dinner with them. So we really encourage our dealers to get to know people throughout the whole company. We do, as I mentioned, the factory tours every single day. So if you're around El Cajon at 1 o'clock, stop on by, get a great tour. And of course, you see our guitars on the Country Music Awards, you see them on The Voice, you see them on American Idol, you see a number of different artists that play our guitars and love them, which we're really excited about. I kind of think it's funny because, you know, we often have many of our artists out in our factory at El Cajon. Zach Brown actually normally keeps his Toyota Land Cruiser out there in our Toyota Land Cruiser Club. But you know, and people don't even realize that these people are coming in and out of San Diego all the time, but they're coming to see us and Deering Banjo and Pepe Romero up in Escondido. We have a great music cluster here in San Diego. Then some of the things we do for giving back is guitar making classes. So one of our big concerns is education, music education and vocational education. So not everybody wants to go to college and get a bachelor's or an MBA. There's people that are just great with their hands and they need a vocational path, and we need guitar builders. So we offer guitar making classes through the El Cajon Economic Development Council. We actually wrote the curriculum and had it approved by the state of California. And we've got a couple of people whose primary job it is to work with these classes and the teachers. If this high school will commit to providing a teacher and making a class available, we'll provide the materials for free, we'll provide the curriculum, we'll provide somebody to train the teacher, and then the final exam is the student plays their guitar for somebody from our company. Often it's Bob Taylor. If he's in town, he'll go be the final exam. If he's not in town, there's others that will go be the final exam. And of course, you know, this is selfish as well. I mean, we find some of our greatest, you know, guitar production employees through this process, but it's also, you know, we don't care that they come to work for Taylor as much as just that we're promoting vocational work in schools. We also work with the San Diego Music Foundation to provide guitars for elementary school classrooms. And we've placed over 1,900 guitars in classrooms in San Diego for students to be able to learn guitar. And beyond that, we a number of donations. And you can read them up there. Last year we donated this year to date, we've donated about 500 guitars to different organizations. And we actually have a place on the website where if you have a charitable organization that you'd like us to consider a guitar donation for, there's a place for it right on our website, and you go put the information in, and there's a team of people who work on that and can contact you and help make that happen, because we definitely believe in giving back to the community. So financial. So this is our revenue growth since 2009. We closed the year at 55 million, and we're projected to be about 95 million in sales this year. And guitar production, you see that will be about 135,000 or so guitars that we'll have produced this year. And we like to have fun. You probably couldn't have gathered that. So here's some of the fun events that we do at the company, and that's Bob and Kurt in the middle, as you can see. And it's just For Halloween, our HR group dressed as the Inhuman HR group and all came as zombies and ran around different departments scaring people as zombies. And just, it's a great, fun organization to work for. This is my favorite picture of Bob and Kurt. This was actually taken about 2 years ago at the beginning of our Messe show, which is a big annual trade show in Germany every year. And what started as a dream is now partnership that's blazed trails throughout the musical instrument industry and is on the forefront of the future of innovation and sustainability.
Do the two of them have a 10 or 15-year plan for succession? Do they have kids who are?
They do. Kurt does not have any children, and Bob has 2 daughters who have their own successful business here in San Diego and are not interested in the guitar industry, other than it's been a great industry for Dad to be in. But we're working on the succession plan right now. And we have an executive team that runs the company. Bob and Kurt are there, but they're in the process of working on what they want to do for retirement and transitioning to an executive team. And we say, come play with us.
That's all the time we have today. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate it.